Hey guys, it's Alec Torelli, and welcome back to the hand of the day. Today's hand comes from an awesome session I played on Poker Night in America at Turning Stone Casino in Verona, New York. So I was at a really interesting table, and this hand came up against November 9er chip leader Joe Mckeehen.
Torelli and I talked about that yesterday, and I said, wow, these guys are willing to basically put 16 hours of them playing poker on tape for their opponents, to view. But he pointed out something, and I thought it made a lot of sense, that this game today and yesterday doesn't even slightly resemble the dynamic that's going to be taking place the November 9th.
For sure.
Chip counts are different, the stakes are different, the stage is different.
25-50, there's a $100 straddle, and I get dealt aces under the gun. Great hand, obviously, and I opened to 300. I could have made it a little bigger here just because whenever I open under the gun, I'm supposed to have a strong hand, and because there's 3 blinds, I could make it 400 or even 450, but I made it 300, whatever. Joe Mckeehen calls on the button. Which is really not a good spot for me. Even though I have a really strong hand, I'm playing out of position and we're really deep stacked against a really good player, and you know, he knows presumably I have a strong range. I have the hand that I'm supposed to have, and pretty much no matter what he has, even if he has, you know, a suited connector or whatever, he's gonna play the hand pretty well against me on the flop and post flop. So it's a tough spot for me just because of the fact that he called despite me having aces. And the big blind Anthony comes in the pot and joins as well. So we're 3-way to the flop. And the flop comes 9-6-5 with 2 hearts.
Wow, big flop for Alec, for Joe Mckeehen.
Yeah, McKehen's got a gut shot.
Yeah, Alec opened mid with 2 aces, and Mckeehen just floated on the button.
Yeah, Mckeehen in position with a gut shot and the flush draw. Torelli without the ace of hearts in his hand. He's going to put a C bet out there with aces.
I have aces with no heart. So very vulnerable flop, a very coordinated board, and Anthony checks. I go ahead and bet here. I think it's a pretty standard bet. I would be betting here with some bluffs, anything that had backdoor outs, like if I had something like Jack-10 suited with a backdoor flush draw. The reason I would bet here with bluffs is because there's a lot of cards on the turn that are sort of scare cards that I could represent. Any card above a 10 is a great card for me to continue bluffing, and it's also a good card that I would bet again for value if I did have an overpair. So it's a great dynamic to set up in the hand to go ahead and bet here, both with strong hands and with air, because it allows you to win the pot in multiple ways. So betting with aces I think is totally fine, and I kind of want to get Mckeehen out of the pot and just play heads up in position against Anthony. That's what I'm hoping that happens, of course.
Obviously Mckehen's never folding, just a question of whether he calls here
I think
or raises.
McKehen's almost always raising, because he could win the pot here, and there's too many cards on the turn. Well, he doesn't raise. But there's too many cards on the turn where just Torelli has to shut down.
Anyway, I bet 750, which is definitely on the bigger side, but I think that's good when you're really deep stacked to be betting bigger here, especially when you're out of position. Mckeehen calls on the button, Anthony folds. Now we're heads up to the turn. The turn's a great card for me, an offsuit 5. So it's really unlikely this card helped my opponent, and it's also unlikely that I don't have the best hand. If Mckeehen had something like a set, a straight, or anything that really smashed the flop, I think he's likely to raise here. After all, we are deep stacked, and he wants to build a big pot to try and win, to stack me. And let's face it, I bet into 3 people, I raised under the gun. It's likely I have a strong hand as well that has a decent amount of equity, and I think he's gonna wanna get value against an overpair. So I feel like if he smashed the flop here, I think he would likely raise. I could be beat by some hands though. He would call the flop with 6-5 suited, even though on the turn there's really only one combination of that. If you look at the 6 and the 5s that are there, there's really only one combination of 6-5 suited, and he could have 5s with hearts in them. So he could have something like 5-4 of hearts, 5-7 of hearts, or ace-5 of hearts, but that's really it, and I just don't think I'm beat that much. So it's a great spot for me, and I really want to bet on the big side here. I want to do that for 2 reasons. Number 1 is I want to force him not to have implied odds with a flush draw. It's really likely that a big part of his range here is bluff catchers, like hands like 9-8 suited, 9-7, 10-9 suited, pocket tens, pocket jacks, hands that really, if I bet again, are very vulnerable and they only really beat a bluff, or he has a big flush draw. And I want to make both of those hands pay a lot. So I want to bet a lot bigger in this spot to force him to fold his flush draws, because I don't really want to play out of position on the river against a good player when we're really deep, when there's a lot of bad cards that come for me. I don't really know what to do if an 8 or a 7 comes, even if it's not a heart. It's a really hard spot for me to play, and when I check and those cards come, or if a heart comes, my range looks really, really weak. And I'm just exposed, sort of. My hand is almost face up. It's really tough for me to play out of position. So I definitely want to bet on the bigger side here and just force him to, you know, pay a lot to realize his equity and pay a lot to catch me bluffing if he thinks I am bluffing. So I don't really see any reason to bet small. And I go ahead and bet 2,100, and he calls again.
Just Alex is never going to bet the turn when Joe hits the turn. I really like raising the flop there and getting more value when you have a lot of equity.
Is that part of your...
Sometimes you're going to win the pot there.
And now when he calls again, I really think that he has some flush draws, but most likely he has bluff catchers. And he has hands like 9-10 suited or something like that that are going to call a second time to see what happens on the river. Or he has a big combo draw, like a straight draw and a flush draw, something like the hand that he actually has, or maybe ace-7 suited or ace-8 suited, something like that. So there's not a ton of strong hands in his range here that slow play twice like this. I think he could have a full house at this point. I mean, there's no real reason to raise if he has a full house. If he was slow playing on the flop, he's definitely going to continue slow playing on the turn, because it's a great spot. He could let me bet the river and then go all in. It's a great spot for him. But I just feel like the way this hand played and the read I got in this situation, that is most likely he doesn't have an extremely strong hand that he's slow playing here.
Or will I get paid?
Oh, for sure. That's a major factor.
The river comes up 3 of hearts, which isn't a great card for me. All the flushes were completed, and I'm really forced to make a decision. Do I check? And if he bets, when I check, I pretty much have to check fold. He's never going to bet a hand that has showdown value that's a bluff catcher. He's never going to bet with like 9-10 suited. He's just going to check and hope to win the pot.
What's the play if you're Torelli? Are you check folding, or is it a bet fold?
So if I'm checking here, the important consideration to keep in mind is that I would be check folding. And I can't really check call just because there's not many hands he's turning into bluffs, and there's not much he's betting for value that's worse than 2 aces, given how the hand was played. So checking really is a little too weak, I think, because I have a really strong hand and it could get value from all the bluff catchers. Check folding seems really weak. Check calling isn't a great option. And so I think my best option here is betting. And the key to keep in mind in this spot is that I'm not loving betting here, but you have to keep in mind I'm faced with 3 different options. I could check fold, check call, or bet.
He decides to bet.
I mean, it's easy to say watching the hands, it's bet fold, obviously. But the thing is, I don't even know if Joe's going to raise.
And given that no option is great, I really have to pick the option that's the least bad. And sometimes you're faced in situations where you don't have a great option. You don't have a great outlet for... You're not in your ideal situation. You can't play the hand exactly how you wanted, or you can't get the value that you wish you could have gotten in the hand based on the cards that came. And when the 3 of hearts comes on this river against a great player like Joe Mckeehen, I'm pretty much in that spot. But I think taking the least bad option and sort of being aware of that thought process of how to make those decisions really will help you to make the right decision, even though it's not the best one. I feel like too many people here are checking just because they're like, oh, this is a bad card. It's hard to win money. I'm going to check, when they don't really realize how that opens up their game and how the hand is going to play afterwards. Betting here, I think, is much better. It really puts Mckeehen in a tough spot. It's going to be hard for him to raise me with a flush, given that the board is paired. And so I just don't think I'm ever getting outplayed that often on the river. After all, I could still have a flush. I could still have a full house. So my range is sort of protected here by betting with aces. And it makes me harder to play against. I mean, I might, if I had a bluff somehow, magically, if I had a bluff in this spot, something like 10-8 suited, I would probably bluff the river again, just because there aren't many bluffs in my range. So I think betting here is pretty strong.
Yeah, he doesn't raise. It seems like an easy raise when you see the hands, but Joe probably thinks he's not going to get paid off by worse.
And I bet half the pot, if you noticed. I bet 3,400. And I think the sizing here is something else to keep in mind. I think if you're going to bet the river, you should be betting the same with all of your hands. And too many people become way too easy to play against, because if they pot the river here, then it's indicative of them having a really, really strong hand, because they'd be too scared to pot the river with something that's vulnerable like my 2 aces. And when they bet half the pot, it's too obvious that they're value betting a hand that's marginal, like aces, and their opponent could now raise them because they have a very, very predictive betting pattern. So what I would do here, and I know I'm going to get questions on this, so I want to address it now. What I would do here when I have 2 aces is I would bet half the pot, but I would also bet half the pot if I had quads or a full house, and it would maybe confuse my opponent. So maybe now he's thinking, well, this guy bet half the pot, I'm going to value raise with a flush, and then he puts himself in a very, very precarious situation when I 3-bet, because I could still be betting here with full houses, and that protects the times that I want to value bet with aces. It also protects the times I want to bluff. So it's really, really a powerful bet, and by balancing your range to bet weak hands and strong hands and bluffs and the nuts all with the same bet size, you really make yourself tough to play against, especially against observant opponents like Mckeehen.
Yeah, I can buy that. They're pretty deep. They're both really deep, and if you raise here,
right, there's bigger flushes that beat them, and they're obviously
pocket
sets.
9, pocket 6s.
Right.
I mean, is Torelli really? He bets 3,000. Mckeehen makes it 11,000. Is Torelli really gonna pay him off?
So I went ahead and bet half the pot. He insta-called, and when he calls that quickly, I pretty much know I'm in trouble. And he turned over Jack-8 of hearts. I was beat, but that's life. Sometimes you try your best and you take the best line, and it's not the best situation for you, but that's poker. So the key here is focus on decision making. Don't worry about the results, and just play the hand the best way possible. If you want more analysis on this specific hand, head over to my blog, alectorelli.com. I break the hand down specifically and show you the math behind why I think betting is the correct play. You'll see all the possible hands that Mckeehen could have in this particular situation, and you'll see that aces is in fact a favorite against his entire range. So head over to my blog, check that out, and for further insight. If you like this, subscribe to my channel, click right here, and I'll see you guys next week. Cheers.
So of course Joe hits the river like usual, like he's been doing the last few months consistently, and I'm happy for Joe. Don't think I'm not, but he is really on a roll, and he just makes hands. So
I said it earlier.
He's the first one to admit it, though.
Dude has not lost a hand since day 2 of the main event.
It's pretty amazing. So now he's going to crack aces.